Hello, good evening everyone. I'm Julian Thompson, Director of Enterprise here at the RSA. Welcome to the event tonight. Some of you just joining us now. Welcome also to everyone who's joining us online. We're live streaming the event tonight, so welcome to all of you and everyone who's joining us also via Twitter. Our hashtag tonight is #RSAMeng, M-E-N-G. Before we begin, though, just a quick reminder to turn your phones to silent, please, so we can be mindful and attentive to everything that Meng is going to teach us about tonight. So it's my great pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker. Chade-Meng Tan is a Google pioneer, an award-winning engineer, a New York Times best-selling author, and philanthropist. His personal goal is to achieve world peace. So this is someone to listen to, I think. He was one of Google's earliest engineers, and among many other things, he helped build Google's first mobile search service. After a successful 8-year stint in engineering and 2 years as head of personal growth, he now serves with Google's people development team. And his current job description, as I say, it's actually bigger than in creating world peace. It's enlighten minds, open hearts, and create world peace. I'd love to sit in on his appraisal. So anyway, Meng joins us this evening to share some insights from the program he developed for Google, which distills emotional intelligence into a set of practical tools and skills that can be used by anyone who wants to work more productively, more collaboratively, and more joyfully. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Chade-Meng Tan.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Well, good evening, my friends. First, I apologize that I just flew in from San Francisco, so I'm like sleepy. So I'm not as funny as I should be. And because I lost my sense of humor, I have to rely entirely on my good looks. So I apologize. Fortunately, yeah. So my name is Meng, and let me see. Okay, I guess I need to advance. Oh, you see, in humor, timing is everything. My name is Meng. I'm the Jolly Good Fellow of Google. I have the coolest job title in corporate America. If we have time during Q&A, you can ask me about how I got this job title. I also have the coolest job description in corporate America, which is to enlighten minds, open hearts, and create world peace. The other thing I'm known for in Google is I'm known for being very old. So I joined Google in 2000. I'm so old, I joined Google in the last millennium. Take that, kids. I'm also famous for being the guy who has been on the front page of the New York Times. And the reason I got on the New York Times is because of a Google tradition. The tradition is that anybody who's famous who comes to Google must have a picture taken with me, and they go on the wall of Maine. So this is a New York Times story about the wall. Oh, by the way, I have to tell a story. So this came out just before I met this guy called Barack Obama, who was back then running for president. And when I met him, he was like, "You're the guy on the New York Times, aren't you?" It's like, how do you know you're famous, right? And Barack Obama knows you from the New York Times. So this picture, by the way, I tell all my friends that I'm the only person who has been on the front page of the New York Times 4 times in one day. So that sex scandal thing, yeah, that's not me. So sorry to disappoint. So some people on the wall are people like this. You see, for example, President Clinton and her husband Bill. I mean future President Clinton. Future President Clinton. I also the other thing I did was I spoke at the UN with a supermodel. I know some of you might have spoken at the UN before, but how many of you spoke at the UN with a supermodel? I spoke at TED, and my latest adventure or misadventure was writing a book, was actually creating a curriculum for emotional intelligence as an engineer. And writing what became an international bestseller. And so this is a cover from the US hardcover edition. The coolest thing about this book is the back cover, because the back cover contains an endorsement from the Dalai Lama and Jimmy Carter. You see, my friends, this is how you know it's a good book. Because what are the chances that the Dalai Lama and Jimmy Carter are both wrong at the same time? Huh? Thank you. So what is Search Inside Yourself? Search Inside Yourself is a curriculum on emotional intelligence. And you may ask, what is emotional intelligence? So the best answer is to answer the question is with a parable. It's a parable of a man on a horse. So the man was just on a horse and he was just going along, and there's a guy on the street asking the guy on the horse, say, hey, rider, where are you going? And the guy on the horse says, I don't know, why are you asking me? You should be asking the horse, duh. Which sounds ridiculous. However, it is something we engage in every day. Because the horse here represents our emotional life, or our emotional mind, and the rider represents our thinking mind, our thinking self. Right? And we have this illusion that the horse controls the rider, that emotions control us. We have no control over our emotional life. Sometimes it gets worse. Sometimes it feels like this. Large parts of my life. If you're feeling angry, if you're feeling hateful, you're feeling jealous, so on and so forth, right? It feels like this. So my friends, that's good news. The good news is that you can go from this to this. You can go from, with enough training, go from skilllessness with the horse to skillfulness with the horse. You can train, in other words, you can train emotional intelligence. Learn to at least influence where the horse goes, right? So that's the good news. What's the bad news? There is no bad news. Like with me, there's only good news and better news. Which is one reason people love me, in addition to my good looks, of course. The better news is that you can go from this to this. You can go from skilllessness to skillfulness and eventually mastery over your emotional life. So what is emotional intelligence? The standard definition is this, is the ability to monitor one's own and others' emotions, feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them, and most importantly, to use this information to guide one's thinking and actions. So that's a standard definition. There is another definition of EI, which I think is shorter and more powerful, in my opinion, which is that emotional intelligence is a collection of emotional skills. And that is important. Why? Because all skills are trainable. Therefore, if EI is just a collection of skills, emotional skills, then EI must be trainable. That's the good news. Again, there's no bad news. There's only better news. The good news is it's trainable. The better news is that it turns out from our experience that you can train emotional intelligence to a meaningful degree, to a degree that's life-changing for some people, in as little as 7 weeks. 20 hours of training. So how do you do that? It turns out that EI cannot be learned. It can only be trained. And why? Why can it be trained? The reason it can be trained is because of a feature of the brain called neuroplasticity. Which is that what we think, what we do, and what we pay attention to changes the function and structure of the brain. Let me see how much time I have. I have a story to tell. The interesting story behind this is that the first empirical evidence that this is true came from here, London. So the story I was told was that there were a couple of neuroscientists, they were on an airplane, and they wanted to study neuroplasticity. And so they were talking loudly to themselves on the airplane. It's like, where can we find a population of people who does a specific thing, and the specific thing is something that we know what's the neural correlate, that where it happens in the brain, right? And we can study it. And as you're talking, somebody from the next seat, total stranger, says, London cabbies, right? Because in order to get a driving license, to drive a cab, you need to take the test, right? To navigate all the streets in London in the head. And we know where that part of the brain responsible for that is, the hippocampus. So the hippocampi of London cabbies were studied. And it turns out that they have bigger and more active hippocampus than normal people, and the longer they've been driving a cab, the more true that is. And that was the first evidence of neuroplasticity in adults. So the good news is that the brain is highly trainable, even for adults, even for engineers. So how do you do this? How do you train emotional intelligence? You can do this in 3 easy steps. And step 1 is attention training. And so you might ask, what has attention got to do with emotional intelligence, right? And the answer is this. When I say attention, I'm talking about something fairly specific, which is the attentional ability to bring the mind to a state that's calm and clear mind, and to do that on demand. In other words, to calm the mind on demand. Bring the mind to this state, calm and clear. Why is this important? The first reason it's important is something that is described by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl says that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space lies your freedom and power to choose your response. And if you have the ability to calm the mind on demand, what happens? That space becomes reliably accessible. The space between stimulus and response. Therefore, what do you get? You get choice, power, freedom. Freedom, my friends, from this one simple skill. So that's good. It gets better. If you are a leader, this skill turns out to be a mark of leadership. So for example, if you are in a meeting room of peers, right? And let's say there's a crisis, and everybody is panicking. And you alone, because of this skill, you alone can calm the mind as you're panicking, calm the mind and think clearly. And if you can do that, what happens? People look at you and say, Celia, she's always calm in crisis. And they feel she's a leader, right? And if in a company, next year's promotion cycle, guess who gets considered? You get considered if you have this skill. So this is an important leadership skill. And it gets better. This skill is also the foundation of all higher cognitive and emotional skills. So you train this, it prepares you for emotional intelligence. So how to do that? The way to do that is with a simple technique called mindfulness. Which is defined very simply as this, as paying attention, but not just paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and most importantly, non-judgmentally. Shall we give it a try? 10 seconds, just 10 seconds, not 10 minutes, 10 seconds, very easy. For 10 seconds, bring attention to the process of breathing, whatever that means to you. And if you need something more specific, attend to the sensation and nose as you breathe. And every time attention wanders away, bring it back. That's all. Sounds easy? Shall we do that for 10 seconds? Okay, 10 seconds beginning now. Okay, that was 10 seconds. How was that? Not too bad, right? So this is the point in my talk where Julian asked for his money back. If I were speaking to a bunch of engineers in Google, they'll be asking what we call the WTF question. And for those who don't know what it stands for, WTF stands for what is happening? And the WTF question is wait a minute. I attend to my breath, wanders away, I bring it back. How could this possibly do me any good? Right? Doesn't make any sense, right? So to answer this question, we use an analogy. And an analogy is training, physical fitness. So let's pretend that nobody in this room knows anything about physical fitness. And I just did one bicep curl. And everybody just did one bicep curl. And you should be asking the same question, the WTF question, which is, how can this possibly do me any good? I take a heavy object, I bring it up, bring it down. Makes no sense, right? However, if you know about physical fitness, you know the answer, which is that every time you do one of this, you strengthen the muscles here a little bit more. And if you do a lot of this, what happens? You develop a quality called strength. And once you develop this quality, the first thing that happens is that you're able to do things that you never imagined doing before. For example, you can carry heavy objects. Right? For example, you can throw out the boyfriend. The boyfriend says, take out the trash. Sure. But besides doing that, besides throwing out a boyfriend, something else happens. It is that if you do this a lot, you also acquire health and fitness. And if you do that, you have more energy at work. You have fewer sick days. You can fly in from San Francisco and London and speak in 3 hours. With 3 hours of sleep in 24 hours, right? You can do that because you're physically fit. And if you do that, what happens? You become more successful. Right? Simply having more energy and having fewer sick days, that alone makes you more successful. And you feel good about yourself. You feel great all the time. And you like yourself in the mirror. Right? And you look confident. So that stupid-looking action, taking a heavy object, up and down, up and down, up and down, this has implications for success, profits, happiness, well-being, feeling great all the time. If you never heard of exercise, that claim I just made should be mind-blowing. And I'm making the same claim about what you just did. Because every time your attention wanders away, you bring it back. It's like strengthening, it's like doing one bicep curl for the mind. Like if you do, every time you bring attention back, it's like strengthening the neurological mechanisms that controls your attention. Specifically the prefrontal cortex. And if you do that a lot, then you gain mastery over attention. And that mastery allows you, among other things, the skill to calm the mind on demand. So that's the first thing. Life-changing already, right? But wait, there's more. This is only step one. There's better news. The second step is self-knowledge that leads to self-mastery. So what does that mean? Remember I said, bring your mind to a state that's calm and clear on demand, right? I talked about calmness. I haven't talked about clarity. So what does clarity mean? Clarity here, specifically, if you have the attentional mastery, you begin to perceive emotions differently. You begin to create a high-resolution perception into the process of emotion. High resolution. Again, what does that mean? So to illustrate, here is a picture, a low-resolution picture. If we increase the resolution, you realize, it's a picture of some old guy trying to hide the recipe of chicken. So what resolution does for you is it gives you useful information. And it's the same with perception of the emotional process. Specifically, we are increasing it on 2 dimensions. The first is a spatial dimension, which means the ability to perceive small changes in the process of emotion. The second is a temporal dimension, which means to perceive it in thin slices of time, or for engineers among you, in real time. Right? Combined, you get insights into emotional life that leads to profound changes. So let me give you one example of a profound change that insight alone can lead to. So the first thing, one way that this happens is going from existential, or seeing our emotional experience as going from existential to experiential. So again, what does that mean? When we experience emotion, we think of it in existential terms. For example, I say I am happy, I am sad, I am angry, right? I am that emotion. That emotion is me. There is no separation. And as your perception into the emotional process sharpens over time, you may introduce a subtle shift in the way you see it. You go from I am angry to I am experiencing anger, which seems like a small shift, right? However, it has profound implications, because this tiny shift introduces the possibility of something called the big sky mind, which is that the mind is like the sky and emotions are like clouds in the sky. Fundamentally, the clouds are not the sky, and therefore, in the same way, my emotions are not me. My emotions are not me, my thoughts are not me. I am not my emotions, I am not my thoughts. And if you're somebody who's stuck in a cycle of, for example, stuck in a cycle of depression, that one insight, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my thoughts, that one insight is the first break out of the cycle of depression. Very powerful insight, life-changing. But wait, there's more. Let me see if I have time for more. Yes, I do. Which is that as your perception sharpens even more, you may see another shift, which is going from experiential to physiological. So in this case, it's going from I am experiencing anger to I am experiencing anger in my body. Right, what does that mean? Right, so again, if I'm too animated as I talk, I might hurt my hand. Right? And if I hurt my hand, I'm going to feel pain. But however, I know this pain is entirely an experience in my body. It's entirely physiological. And because of that, I have options. I can massage, I can ice, I can ignore, I can distract by having ice cream, and so on. I can experience it mindfully because I came to a talk about mindfulness. Like a range of options because this is simply an experience in my body. Imagine being able to see the process or the experience of emotion simply as an experience in the body. The same level, this sadness that I'm feeling, the same level of experience as this pain in my hand. If you become able to perceive that, my friends, is a beginning of mastery over the emotional process. It's that powerful. It's life-changing. But that's only step 2. But wait, there's more. Well, there's a cartoon around it. Step 3 is, I say here, creating useful mental habits. When I say useful here, specifically, I mean pro-social mental habits. So what does that mean again? I'll give you an example. One pro-social mental habit is a habit of kindness, which is to look at a human being. And the first thought is, I wish for this person to be happy. I wish for that person to be happy. As your first thought. Why? Because it is a habit. For no other reason than because this is my habit. Imagine having that habit. Like what happens? Everything changes. Right? Because habit becomes personality. Personality becomes you. And eventually, having a habit of kindness turns you into a kind person. It changes you. And all it takes is to train a habit of the mind. Shall we try an experiment? You might ask, how do you train this habit? It's very simple. The same way you train any other habit. If you do something often enough, it becomes a habit. That's all. Simple as that. So let's try this, okay? 10 seconds, very easy. For 10 seconds, identify 2 human beings in this room. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. Just think. Think, I wish for that person to be happy, and I wish for that person to be happy. That's all. Easy? Shall we try that for 10 seconds? Okay, beginning now. That was it. Did you notice you were smiling when you did that? Yeah? And my friends, you may discover this. You may discover that to be on the giving end of a kind thought is intrinsically rewarding. Right? There's no action involved, just thinking. Just on the giving end, not even on the receiving end. Giving end of kind thought, intrinsically rewarding. What does that mean? That means, my friends, you may have just found a secret for happiness. All other things equal. All you have to do is to wish for people to be happy randomly, and you'll be happy. Happiness increases for no cost. Right? That's fascinating, right? So how far can you push that? A couple of months ago, I gave a talk to an audience of roughly this size in San Francisco. And that was a Tuesday. Sorry, that was a Monday. And then I say, okay, tomorrow is a work day, try this. Tomorrow, go back to work. Every hour, spend 10 seconds randomly wishing for 2 people to be happy. Again, don't do anything, don't say anything, just think. Okay? That's all, and then go back to work. 10 seconds an hour, doesn't change anything. So I suggested that. That was Monday. Wednesday morning, I received an email from a total stranger. And this person says, I hate my job. I hate coming to work every single day. However, I came to your talk on Monday, and Tuesday I tried out that experiment you suggested, and Tuesday was my happiest day in 7 years. 7 years. That was it, one simple exercise. So my friends, give that a try tomorrow. Tomorrow is a work day, right? Yeah, okay. Every hour, spend 10 seconds wishing for 2 people to be happy, and see what happens. Okay? So, again, that's good news. So to train kindness, just do this a lot. Randomly wish for people to be happy, and that's it. Eventually, you'll get a habit that becomes you, and you become a kind person. So what happens with this? So first thing is it benefits your soul. Right? It's good for your soul. If you're a kind person, if you're a loving person, it can't be bad for you, right? Yes, that's the good news. What's the bad news? Again, there's no bad news. There's only good news and better news. The better news is that this ability is also good for your career, especially if you're a leader. So even if you're not a leader, you're an individual contributor, this skill is very useful for success. Because if you go into a meeting room and consistently, every time you walk in a meeting room, you look at people and you wish for them to be happy, what happens? It reflects on your body language. It reflects on your posture, your facial tone, and so on and so forth. And people, they pick it up unconsciously, and they like you. And because they like you, eventually they want to help you succeed. And they don't really know why they like you. They think it's because of your good looks and your nice Chinese suit. But it's because you're wishing for them to be happy. So that's the first thing. It's good for your soul and it's good for your success. And if you're a leader, there was a study done in California, published in 2003, which showed that, so the study investigated what differentiated the top performing managers from the bottom performing managers. And in this study, they found only one difference. And that one difference is affection. The top performing leaders, they love people and they want to be loved. Which is surprising. At least for me, it's surprising, right? If you grow up thinking that being a boss means being nasty, right? Otherwise things don't get done, it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't make a lot of sense. If you love people, you're more successful as a boss. Why? It turns out there's a very simple explanation, which is that all other things equal, the more your people like you, the more they love you, the harder they work for you. And therefore, it reflects on your success. It's as simple as that. So being loved is good for you. Good, not just good for your soul, not just good for other people, it's good for your career. And of course, at this point of my speech, you may be wondering, where's the limit, right? There must be situations where that's not true. So, okay, name the extreme example. How about the Navy, right? In the Navy, you order people to their deaths, right? You cannot afford to be nice. So that question turns out it has been investigated, has been studied in 1988. In 1988, the study was done on naval officers in the US Navy on what makes the most effective US naval commanders. And the finding was this. Finding was that the best US naval commanders were described in these words: positive, outgoing, emotionally expressive, dramatic, warm, trustful, appreciative, gentle, and so on. In other words, my friends, nice people. In fact, the title of this study was Nice Guys Finish First. Oh, yeah, back then they were all guys in the Navy. I gave this talk to a bunch of naval officers who came to visit Google, and these are the type of top performing officers who gets to tour around companies. And among them, there were like Navy SEALs and Top Gun pilots, like the best of the best of the best. And I asked them this question. I told them this. I showed this slide and I said, "Is this true for you?" And they all said yes. So now I know it's confirmed, right? So even for Navy SEALs, even for Top Gun pilots, the best of the best, being nice makes you a good leader. So that's it. I have to show this cartoon. Nice. So that's it. 3 easy steps to training emotional intelligence. So easy, even I can do it. I've been running this class in Google since 2007. So I joined Google as an engineer back in the year 2000. And I started working on this in my spare time, 20% time. So engineers get 20% time to do whatever they wanted, and I decided to spend my 20% time doing this. And eventually, I became the first Google engineer to move to HR to do this. And so I've been running this for a couple of years, and the feedback I get consistently from my students is some version of this. Your class changed my life. Changed my life. Like, imagine coming to work on a Monday, on a Tuesday, taking a class, and then it changes your life. And imagine being on the giving end of that experience, which is my life. I'm very lucky. And, by the way, I've also started an institute. So we run this in Google for a while, and I was allowed to bring this outside of Google. So I started an institute called the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute with the blessing of my employer. And you know that I named this institute because it's pronounced as silly. So anybody's interested in this? Yeah, silly.org. Yeah, get serious about silly. Okay, last story to tell before I give the stage. Why did I do this? Why did I start Search Inside Yourself? It's very simple. I had one simple wish. All I wanted to do was to create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. That was all. And it started in 2003. In 2003, I was taking a walk outside the Google campus, and I had that moment. I think many of you had that moment where you know what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I had that moment. And for the rest of my life, I was going to create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. World peace in my lifetime. That was what I wanted to do. How to do that? I figured it out. I figured the way to do that is to scale inner peace, inner happiness, and compassion worldwide. Because if these 3 qualities are scaled worldwide, then we have the conditions for world peace in my lifetime, in our lifetimes. How to do that? I figured it out, which is that the way to do that is to align these 3 qualities with success and profits. Because if I were to go around speaking at RSA and everywhere about goodness, we should all be compassionate, we should all be nice to people. And they go home, right? However, if I talk about success and profits, this will help you succeed. This will get you your next promotion. And it's good for the world. And it's good for you. And it creates a condition for world peace. Right? So, success and profits with world peace being the necessary and unavoidable side effect. Then it will spread. Then we have the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. How do we do that? And I figured it out. The way to do that was emotional intelligence. Because everybody knows EI, good for my career, good for my team. And nobody really knows how to train it among adults. And we figured it out in a way that is also creates peace, joy, compassion. So that started me on this journey. And that's where I am right now. And my friends, I hope that this talk was helpful to you. And together, we can create the conditions for world peace in our lifetimes. Thank you. Thank you.
Meng, thank you very much indeed. Very inspiring. I'm just going to set the ball rolling for us all. I know there's lots of questions from you, I'm sure, over the next half hour or so. But just to start off, I think what I'm interested in particularly is the fact that this has come about from a work organization, from a place of work where presumably there's a quite high intensity of work and a lot of people having to meet very competing demands in a very dynamic environment. And perhaps, as you say, from an engineering background where some of this stuff invites the WTF question. So, you know, I think many of us experience, and the data shows this as well, for many people, working life is intensifying, it's becoming more unstable, precarious. We're always on with technology all the time we have to interact with and we have to be available to people. So, I mean, I'm interested in how it is that we can offset that and try to develop these habits or these practices when all of these trends are pushing us towards a kind of fractured attention, a lack of compassion perhaps, a lack of sense of kindness towards others because competition is intensifying all the time. I mean, in a place like Google, in one hand, there is a very enabling environment for that to happen because you have your 20% time where you can start something and see it happening. But in many organizations, perhaps that wouldn't be the case. So how does it work in a work organization to make this something that can be really accessible for people?
I think there are 3 steps. The first is the understanding, the second is the practice, and the third is showing the example. So the first step is understanding that this is actually good for my career. Right? So for example, if I'm taking a micro break, 1 breath, I'm not taking time away from my job. I'm not having to choose between success and wellness. I'm doing both at once. That the wellness actually contributes to my success. Right? So like in the middle of work day, things are falling apart. I take 1 moment to breathe. What happens? I reset my body. I can get more done, right? So it's good for my wellness and my success. And same thing with kindness. I walk into a room, people who I have problems with, I look at them with kindness. What happens? Things work out. And it's good for me. Right? So again, it's not a choice between one or the other. You choose both at once. So understanding that's the first thing. Right? And there's an analogy again. Analogy is this is it. So first understanding. The second one is the practice. And the practice are 2 components. There is the micro and the macro practice. The micro practice is doing the practice in very thin slices of time. For example, 1 breath, right? Randomly take 1 breath, or if things are difficult, take 1 breath. The other micro practice is randomly look at a human being and wish for the person to be happy, right? Doesn't take time. And do not underestimate the micro practices. Let me see, where was it most powerful? So let me give you an example of a place where a micro practice changes the whole game, literally this time, because we're talking about tennis. So the question is, what differentiates the top tennis players in the world from the very top tennis players in the world, those who win the Wimbledons of the world, right? And the answer, according to at least one of my friends, Novak, he was one of the top players in the world, is the ability to to reset the body and mind. So in between sets, there's 10 to 15 seconds in between sets. The best players in the world, they can take a breath and reset their body so that they're closer to the resting state than 10 seconds ago. And because of that, they can perform at peak performance over and over again until they win. Right? So it's very micro practices, very powerful. And the second component of practice is macro practice, which is actually take time, like take 10 minutes to sit. It's the same as going to the gym. So micro practice is like in between buildings, you walk fast, so you get fit. Macro is like you actually go to the gym, so you get fitter. So macro practice take time to sit so that you can be even, your mind is even fitter than if you do micro practices alone. So that's the second part. The third part is show the example. Right? So if you're physically fit and you're successful at work, right? People get it. And people ask, why is Julian so successful? Well, because he's healthy and fit. I mean, the young people come to you and say, why? Because I go to the gym every 3 times a week, and so on and so forth, right? And they want to be like you. And the same with mental practices. If you're mentally healthy and fit, and then you are successful because of that, eventually people will notice. People will say, Julian, why is it that you are always so calm? Why is it that you're always so nice with people? And so on. And why is it everybody loves you? Right? And you say, because I've been doing these practices. And by showing the example, you change everything. So these 3 steps: know, understanding, practicing, and being the example. That's all.
So, and if that happens, and if people start to embark on that journey, in say, a contained community like a work organization, what do you see happening when people start to do that on a consistent basis, and they come to your course, they say it changed my life? How does it translate into changes in their behavior, and in terms of the kinds of work they do, the jobs they do, and maybe challenging or questioning the organization and what it does? Because that's not just an internal practice. When they start to act with kindness and with mindfulness, they then consider their actions much more, presumably, and they take us able to to be aware and conscious of those actions and how they relate to the wider world. So, I mean, in Google, for example, where people do this, has it translated into a change in the way that the organization actually performs?
Definitely. So a lot of feedback I get, there are a lot of people who told me they got their promotions because of what they learned in SIY. Right? You see, I would never have gotten my promotion if not for the skills I picked up here. I can give you one example. This guy called Bill, and that's his real name. So Bill took my class. Sadly for him, it changed his life. So after he took my class, he realized that he's been working too hard. So he decided to work 4 days a week. So he took a day off every week, and he got a promotion after that. So he worked less and he got promoted. And so I asked Bill why. Like, what do you do? And he did a couple of things. And I give you 2 examples that relates to what we talked about. One is that relationships change. So for example, if you work in an environment like Google, we have a team, for example, that create, there are teams that create products and features, and then the teams that keep the site running, and there's some inherent tension, right? Because once this site, they just want to create more stuff, this site is like, the more changes they make, the more likely things will break, right? So there's some tension by design. And if you're not careful, whichever side you're on, if you do this day after day, you think the other side is trying to destroy my life. And what Bill realized one day after taking the class is he woke up one day and realized, wait, that guy is not trying to screw my life. That guy is doing his job. If I were him, I would be saying the same things to me. And because of that, the relationship changed. And they work well together and things get done. So that's one example. The other thing he did was Bill started asking his team, and he was a manager. He was managing a large team. He asked them, what is it I do that is useless to you? And what is it that I don't do that is useful to you? And one thing the team told him was, responding to every email, you don't have to do that. That's our job, right? That emails concerning the site going down or something, we can handle it. We don't need your input. So he stopped doing that. So he spent less time doing, he's more free time. And the team became more effective because they felt they had more autonomy. So stuff like that. Yeah, changes behavior.
So it becomes a collective, a contagion. Almost people start to become more conscious and able to express the way that it's affecting their own consciousness.
Yeah, that too.
So let's open it up for questions. So we've already got a fair few hands coming up. That's great. So we start here. I think you put your hand up first. This gentleman in the front. Yes, if you could wait for a microphone, and also if you could try and keep your questions quite short. That means we'll get more questions in the 20 minutes or so we have. Thanks.
So, Meng, a fantastic talk, and I can see why people see this as life-changing. I want to ask you about world peace, because although it's very inspiring what you said, there's lots of terrible things happening in Syria, in Ukraine, North Korea, and so on. So what is your approach to get the methods in this course applicable in these hotspots in the world? Are you looking to get all the leaders of these countries to come to your 7-week-long course?
Eventually, I hope. But for now, I'm just trying to, there are 2 things I'm trying to do. The first thing is to spread this at least to the working world, the corporate world, by aligning success and profits with goodness. And hopefully because of that goodness will spread. And then maybe also the schools. Right? And there's something else. So that's the first part. There's something else I'm doing, which is I'm one of the leaders of this campaign called 1 Billion Acts of Peace, which is we are working with 13 Nobel Peace Laureates to try to inspire 1 billion peace projects in 5 years. And I'm announcing this at the UN in May. Oh, that's next month. That's very soon. So that's the other thing I'm doing. So in other words, everything I'm doing so far have been on the grassroots level, and I'm hoping you'll spread on the grassroots level, and then eventually you'll rise up. Yeah, that's all I have for now. Hopefully somebody will, I don't know, Kim Jong-il will invite me to teach him SIY or something.
Yeah, sorry, there was a lady here, just the second row. Thank you.
Do you think there could be, or have you experienced any unintended consequences? I'm thinking about, feeling content when I'm searching inside of myself, feeling that inner peace and calmness. So, could that mean that I would feel content in a organization I shouldn't stay in, or in a relationship that I shouldn't be in? What do you think about that? Thank you.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, the danger of the contentment is you stop working hard. You stop striving. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
And possibly can I add another one, which is some people claim that the conflict and tension that goes with difficult problems is necessary for creativity, for example. Yes. It's an important driver of creative process. Yeah.
Okay. Remind me about the creativity part. That's important. But first, this part. It's actually not a new problem. If you look at the community of deep practitioners, the Zen people, the problem is if you only practice the calmness and peace and joy, eventually you start withdrawing from the world, because you can be happy without doing anything, so why do anything, right? And there's a word for that. They're called Zen bums. And what's the antidote of that? The antidote of that is compassion, right? I mean, I'm happy, but all those people, they are suffering. I have to serve them. And that gets the guy, the Zen guy, out of the house to do service. And I think it's similar over here. These practices have to be balanced by practices with kindness and compassion, right? So that in addition to contentment, we want to create a better world to serve our fellow human beings. And it turns out that not just good for your practice, it's also good for leadership. The best form of leadership known is something called level 5 leadership. Right? It's also called good to great leadership. It's the type of leadership that brings an organization from good to great. And it takes a very specific kind of leader. And they're called good to great leaders, or level 5 leaders, and they have two qualities. In addition to being outstanding managers, right? They also they are personally humble. And they are very ambitious. And their ambition is for the greater good, not for themselves. Right? So, and because of that, they're humble and they're ambitious, therefore they inspire people. Therefore people want to work for them, and they create great good, and they bring the organization up. And if you look at compassion has three characteristics. The first is, three domains. The first domain is a cognitive domain, which is I understand you. The second is affective domain, which is I feel for you. And the third is a motivational domain, which is I want to help you. Combined, that is compassion. And if you look at compassion in relationship to level 5 leadership, you'll find that the first two creates the conditions for humility, and the last one creates the conditions for ambition for greater good. And therefore, compassion, in addition to inner happiness, makes you an outstanding leader. So don't forget compassion. Your question, creativity. I find that the calm mind, the ability to calm the mind on demand, that creates the conditions for creativity. And there are a couple of ways to look at it. One way to look at it is analogy of water. So if there's a lot of wind, the water is like turbulent. And if you drop a stone, you see the ripple, but you don't see a lot of it. But if the water is very calm, if you drop a stone, the ripples are very clear. So when the mind is very calm and you allow ideas to arise on their own in that calm mind, you can see them very clearly. And sometimes those are the kind of thoughts that solve creative problems. And in fact, you experience this day-to-day, in day-to-day life a lot. Like when is it that you're most likely to solve a creative problem? I say the shower, right? At least for me, it's a shower. And why is it a shower? Because when you're in the shower, you're in precisely that frame of mind. You're not thinking about the problem. You are relaxed and alert at the same time. So your mind is calm and clear. And then you have insights. Imagine being able to bring up the mind of the shower on demand. Then your probability of a creative insight increases. So that's the practice.
Thank you. Thank you. Great. So now there's 2 questions here. Let's start taking it in bunches so we can get more done. So let's have your question, because I know you've had your hand up and at the back there. And I'll come back to you. I'm going to take one from here as well. So those 3 questions first, and then I'll come back to you next. Thanks.
Meng, thank you very much. You mentioned scale, and my question is regarding software, since software scales so well. What about using software, using what people use every day, an application, to actually diffuse the very learnings of search for yourself, inside yourself, at scale, to everybody? So maybe an application that would transform our small triggers for everyday peeing, maybe, or brushing your teeth, into a mindful experience.
Yes.
Have you convinced?
So let's take that and then take the other 2, and then you can ask them all together if you can. That'd be great. Thanks, Matt. The back there. Yeah.
I'd heard that one of the maybe unexpected results of your course inside Google was that maybe the people that did it were less likely to stick working with Google, and they moved on. It's just a rumor. I don't know whether it's true, but I'd be interested to hear, because you'll probably know.
Okay, thank you.
And then there was a question here at the front as well, please. This gentleman here,
Thank you. There is no necessary correlation between profitability and morality. And all of these conditions could pertain in a situation where the activity is profitable but amoral. And I just wonder about your thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
So the first question is on software. Software, that actually has been done already. One of the most successful came from England, Headspace, headspace.com or something. Get some Headspace, it's the name of the company. But I think that's insufficient. I think that the next thing we need to do is to be able to measure mental states, mental and emotional states. Right? So I invested in a company, a Canadian company, that seems to be able to do that with a headband. So once we can measure mental and emotional states, then we have more opportunities to help people with software. So coming soon to a headband near you.
First, yep.
Yes. Okay. About people leaving Google, I haven't observed a lot of that. What I have observed is people moving jobs within Google. So they are in a job in Google, and after SIY, they discover that the nagging emotional feeling that I don't like this work is actually stronger than they thought it was, because now they can see it more clearly. And because of that, they'll be motivated to find something else in the company. And then after that, they become happier. So it works for everybody. Yeah. I hope nobody leaves Google, otherwise I'll be out of job. Morality and ethics. Traditionally, so I think there are 2 partial answers. The first partial answer is this. It's traditionally, in a Zen monastery, for example, or in a Zen training, the teacher will not teach you to meditate unless you first commit to ethical behavior. Right? Then you learn meditation. In modern times, in the US, we don't do that. We teach anybody who wants to learn. The good news is, I think there's a circular relationship, which is that the more you have inner peace and joy, the more likely you're going to have ethical behavior. Why? Because a lot of time we are unethical because we want to gain something. We are in pain. Right? I want to gain this. And if I don't need to gain this, then I don't have to be some person I cannot say on camera. Right? So, and then being ethical, my mind is calmer. I'm what do you call that? My conscience is clear. Then I'm more likely to meditate better. So it's circular. Because it's circular, which means you can start from any point. Therefore, I think starting from teaching them meditation is not a bad thing, because then eventually I hope they'll become more ethical. So that's half the answer. The other half of the answer is, this is why, my friend, this is why I put so much emphasis on kindness and compassion. Because if we are peaceful and joyful, and you develop an instinct for kindness and compassion, then there's even less likelihood that you will do anything unethical. And as those practices strengthen, in theory, the probability becomes 0. Right? The person becomes incapable of creating gross evil, like stealing or killing or anything. So yeah, I hope that. So yeah.
Yes, you had a question.
You talked about
Oh, sorry, could you
You
wait
need
for
a
the
mic.
microphone? Thank you. Sorry, it's just coming.
This is one of my favorite friends, Celia.
Meng, thank you for a fascinating talk. You talked about measuring emotional and mental states, but have you found an efficient way to measure how fast people are learning to meditate worldwide? In other words, is it your impression, or have you been able to measure the rate at which people are waking up worldwide?
Oh, that is a good question. So the short answer is I haven't measured, because I haven't even thought about the problem. It's an intriguing problem to think about. However, I think that the number of people who are waking up, there's more now than in the history of the world. And there's a very simple reason. Because those things we've been talking about, like calming the mind, those meditation practices, calming the mind, joy, and so on, they have never been taught outside of a monastery until, like, I think the last century, 1950-ish, when there's this person called Goenka from India. And Goenka was the first person who started teaching this to lay people. And then eventually became a movement, and now lay people can learn meditation. And my experience teaching it is that people get it very quickly. If you teach them in the right way, within the first 100 minutes, we can measure changes, positive changes. 100 minutes. So it's not that long, like fewer than 2 hours. So if everybody in the world just do 100 minutes of training, that alone is the first step to awakening. And so because it is so widespread now, and because we are able to teach it better, I think we are awakening people at a vastly higher rate than ever in the history of the world.
We've got time for one more question, I guess, or maybe two if you're very quick. So let's.
And if I'm very quick.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, gentleman here, and then this lady here, I think, were first with their hands up, so thank you. Sorry for those who we haven't had time for. So just yes, thank you.
In work, in business, we are naturally competitive. We measure ourselves and our companies not just by our own achievements, but whether we can overtake a competitive company. What are your feelings about this, and how can we use mindfulness to overcome that?
Thank you. And then a question for the lady there. Yeah, please.
I work for a cancer charity. We know that people living with cancer are affected by anxiety, depression, fear of recurrence. What application do you think mindfulness might have for those people? And how do you reach them when they might be sitting at home in quite a negative place and not necessarily in the work environment or easily contactable?
Okay. The first part, competition. Competition is not a bad thing. As long as competition also serves the greater good. So example is, let's say we're in one business, and then let's say I'm making bread, right? So let's not use Google as an example. I'm making bread, and Julian opens a store next door, and he makes better bread. And he's taking all my customers. Thank you, Julian. So what do I do?
To the gym as well.
Yeah, that's right. So what do I do, right? One thing I could do is to try to destroy his business. I can tell you, you know what he did on weekends, blah, blah, blah. You know. Or I can make better bread. If I make better bread, I'm being competitive, and all the customers benefit. Or I can make better bread at a cheaper price, right? So the competition serves the greater good. So I think if we compete, as long as we keep the mindset, let's compete in a way that serves the greater good, I think that's good. And also, I also think that competition is not conflicting to peace and joy and happiness and compassion. I'll give you one example, basketball. Friends play basketball with each other all the time, right? And they're still friends before the game, and they're friends after the game, right? Even though they're competitive. So it doesn't have to destroy friendships or relationships. The last question, can you repeat that again?
What application do you think mindfulness has for people living with cancer or any other long-term condition where they are anxious, depressed? And how do you reach them when they're not in the workplace? They might be sitting at home.
Are you aware of something called MBSR, the mindfulness-based stress reduction? Yes. So it was started by one of my heroes, John Kabat-Zinn. So in fact, and John was one of the people who inspired me to do my work. So in fact, this segment of population was addressed before the work segment. And the way John started was this. I think in the 60s or 70s, he was a researcher at, I think, UMass, University of Massachusetts, or MIT, one of the two. And he started seeing patients who they're in so much pain, the doctors can't do anything for them. So he started going around the doctors and say, no, those patients that you cannot help, why don't you give them to me? And all the doctors are, yeah, of course. So he started working with those people. Cancer, terminal conditions, and the pain, they cannot do anything about the pain. It's that bad. And he started teaching them mindfulness. And it worked. And one of the stories is an old man came to the MBSR class on wheelchair because he has so much pain in his legs, his feet could not touch the ground. Every time he did that, it was immensely painful. And he didn't know why, to him, he was wasting his time. But he didn't see how this meditation thing could help him in any way. But he was so desperate, he was willing to try anything. So he came to this class. And over the course of 8 weeks, he graduated from wheelchair to crutches, and then from crutches to cane. And so John asked him, what changed? Did the pain become different? And the old man said, no, the pain feels exactly the same. What changed was my relationship to the pain. So it's very powerful. So that population has already been addressed, and I think we can do more.
Thank you very much indeed. Just remains for us all to thank Chade-Meng Tan for a fantastic talk, and also to mention that his book is, I think it's outside now, isn't it, for people who want to get a book, and to have him sign it, and to contribute to building world peace starts here at the RSA. Try some of these experiments, tweet about it, try and see what happens in your own lives by doing this. And just to say finally though, thank you very much indeed, Meng. Thank you. Thank you.